Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Process Podcast. Jack Thomas, welcome to the Process Podcast.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So, Jack, I have to say, I'm going to start by saying thank you because you had me as a guest on your podcast, the Fitness Business Asia podcast, some time ago. And it's been jotted down in my notes. At some point in time, I need to get Jack on our podcast. So thank you very much for being here.
Not at all. Really enjoyed our chat. Really enjoyed our episode. It's amazing how long ago that seems now. I think a lot's changed since then. So yeah, pleasure to have you on our show and pleasure to be here as well.
And you've just hit how many episodes? I know you just did a little celebratory.
That's right. Yeah, we hit 200 episodes. So I think we're on 205, 206 now. So yeah, it's been quite a ride. Started in 2016 and we've done pretty much weekly episodes since then.
So awesome. So awesome. And I have to admit, when I first got into podcasting, your podcast was one I had listened to already. And a lot of people in the Asia space were talking about. And I just thought it was really cool that you had, in the title alone, like targeted and said like Asia is where we're going to be. And, I find so many parallels with our business with Coastal and Process and wanted to be a part of Asia and really make a mark here. So great work.
That's awesome. Yeah, happy to hear it provided some inspiration. And the original idea was actually to offer something for Asia specifically. So I wanted to get that in the title. I'd been listening to podcasts from Australia and the States and UK and thought there wasn't really anything for Asia or wasn't anything at all. So that was kind of where I slotted in 4 years ago.
Awesome. Jack, I feel like you wear a few different hats. So if I go into your Instagram, the three hats that are at the forefront of your profile. Number one, you're the founder and CEO of Base, which is actually won Gym of the Year. Was that last year?
Yes, that was
Asian
2019, I believe. And then for the same awards, we won Thailand's Gym of the Year last year. So awesome. Yeah, a couple of awards along the way for Base.
So founder and CEO of Base, you are a writer. You write for BK Magazine, or you're based in Bangkok, I should say.
Yes, that's right.
And lastly, as we've just touched on, you are a podcast host of the Fitness Business Asia podcast. Let's start with Base. What do you do at Base? What's your role? What do you do?
So I am the founder of Base. I, with some business partners, set up Base in 2016. But if we can backtrack a little bit, I got into the fitness industry about 11 years ago now in Bangkok. So it was 2011. I was doing clothing export at the time, but things weren't going so well and really needed a change of career. It was kind of in line with the global economic crisis. So the business was hit quite hard and I pretty much just lost all motivation. I was doing some football coaching at some international schools. And so that was kind of getting me active again. I'd always trained on and off, always been to the gym, the classic sort of weight training plus running. I'd done a few half marathons, but always been interested in sport and interested in training. And it was actually seeing the poor standards in one of the big well-known chain gyms here, which kind of inspired me to get into the industry. And I saw a few expats that were doing well, but it was very much a new industry. It was only this particular chain that was really doing anything like you'd expect to see in the West. And seeing that the standards weren't so great, I really thought there was an opportunity to do something that I enjoyed. I'd always liked the idea of kind of helping people get fitter and stronger. I'd help some friends with their fitness program, even though I'd only had a basic knowledge, and just saw like a little opportunity to do something that I love. Never really saw myself opening a gym. It didn't really even enter my mind. Went back to the UK at that time. That was 2011. Did my kind of standard UK personal training certification. I chose to do it in the UK because I thought, well, maybe sometime I might go back to the UK and work there, because it was available to do in Thailand at the time. Went back to the UK for the summer, had a great time, got my qualifications, came back to Bangkok to a very young, immature industry. There was not really any boutique fitness training studios, no CrossFits, nothing like that. But I met a guy called Rich Cohen, who became my boss and is a good friend to this day. He had a small studio, plus he was running park boot camps. So I was kind of thrown into the deep end, running these boot camps, which were awesome. We look back very fondly on it, Rich and I. We met up the other day and we were talking about it. Rain or shine, we'd be there in the park doing these boot camps, sometimes up to 20 people. And that was a really good introduction to fitness. And then alongside that, we had a very small studio. It was kind of a converted office space. We used to do some personal training there as well. So I had a year getting experience in that environment, which was awesome. And then Richard and the team, but it was Richard's business, we opened the lab. And that was kind of the first boutique premium fitness training studio in Bangkok, really. There was one other opened up around about the same time. And so for a year or two, we were pretty much the only sort of premium fitness studio in Bangkok. And it was awesome. Pretty much overnight, it got packed. We had Thai TV shows coming in, and we would talk the presenters through our concept. These are battle ropes, these are kettlebells, these are barbells. And it really kind of got this attention overnight. And also along with that, which was really cool, is we went from being about 2% Thai to about 30% Thai overnight. And then over the next few years, that percentage just went up and up until we became majority Thai, which was really cool because it really opened up the fitness industry here. So that was just a really awesome, magical time, kind of right at the beginning of sort of Bangkok's premium boutique fitness scene. So I was in that role at the lab for about 4 years and went from coach to manager. So I started recruiting coaches and managing coaches. Then Richard went to live in Australia for a few years. And so I was running the facility with a Thai manager. And that kind of gave me the confidence, if you will, and a bit of experience to make me make that first step into setting up my own business. So it was 2016 that I left the lab and then started working on base. So yeah, that's a little bit about how I got into that sport in the first place.
Okay, I have about a million questions to ask. But I feel like actually the first question, because I love hearing people's backstories, like what brought you to Bangkok in the first place?
Yeah, so I was working, well, I left school at 16, so I didn't do university or anything like that. Went straight into retail, moved out of home at 17, started partying a lot, got a few retail jobs, pretty much minimum wage in the UK, worked in a few call centers and pretty much just doing that in the week, partying on the weekends. And then just by chance, by going into, I'd gone overdrawn. So I had to go in and organize an overdraft with the bank. And they said they were looking for cashiers. So I must have been about 19 at the time. And I was like, brilliant. It's my first real proper job. So I started working in the bank in Bristol, where I'm from in the UK. They had their head office. It was Lloyds TSB at the time. Now it's called Lloyds Bank. They had their head office in Bristol. So for me, I was like, I'm set. This is my career. I can work my way up the corporate ladder. It's a company that I'm kind of a bit proud to work for. And I kind of felt like things were pretty much set. Had a good first year and started getting some opportunities to do different things within the bank. And then started to really lose faith in everything that the bank stood for, the whole corporate culture, the values of the business. I mean, I don't even think there were any stated values, but their true values were quite clearly just make as much money as possible from everyone that walks through the door without any regard for them or anything about them. And that just sort of became difficult for me to do after a year or two. And it was only a chance visit to Thailand to see a friend who was traveling here that really made me realize that's not the path for me. That's not what I wanted to do. And I actually remember stepping through the door after 2 weeks in Thailand with my friend who was traveling and looking around the bank and just thinking, I got to get out of here. I have to get out. So I pretty much told my boss straight away in our next one-to-one that I'm done, within 6 months, I'll be out of here. So I gave him lots of notice. I got a bar job in the night, was doing bank work in the daytime, saved up as much money as I could, and then came to Thailand in 2003, 2004. Started with the goal to just have some fun. I had a working visa for Australia. That was kind of part of the plan as well, but never made it that far. Started traveling for a bit, had a great time, met some people teaching English in Bangkok. So started teaching English just as a cool experience, maybe 6 months and then move on. That was the idea. Really enjoyed Bangkok, had a good time here. And just as I was thinking about leaving, I found some local stores that were kind of tucked away in one of the local markets, having some really cool designs, very kind of Japanese, Asian inspired, men's t-shirts, hoodies, jeans, this kind of thing. And saw that and thought, man, that would sell really well in the UK. And the price was great as well. So started selling a little bit online and started working with a friend of mine in the UK who I went to school with, one of my best friends there, and started selling on eBay and also shipping over shipments of these clothes. And then my friend would go to market stalls, independent shops, and sell these kind of different, unique clothes. That went really well. It kind of exploded overnight. So I quit my teaching job, which although it was fun, I was quite happy to say goodbye to that and launched myself full into this clothing business. I'd always liked the idea of, quote unquote, working for myself, having my own business. And it was just a great experience and the money was quite good. And I was learning a lot about, marketing and, customer service and, putting in systems and processes. Prepared me a little bit, or at least gave me sort of the entrepreneurial mindset that would benefit me later, but not really many transferable skills to what it meant to set up a gym where we've got, many employees and everything else. But definitely gave me a taste of working for myself. Then the business, as I mentioned, just sort of started going downhill probably a year or so before the credit crunch, the financial crisis really hit. And if I'm honest, I kind of lost my motivation. I'd systemized the business to a point where I pretty much stepped away and was just having a laugh in Bangkok, if I'm honest. I had an assistant, a member of staff that used to do most of the work, just got lazy, didn't really take advantage of the opportunities that were clearly there. Looking back, I really could have made a lot more money and set things up in a much stronger way. And by the time the business really took a downturn, I was unmotivated. I didn't enjoy it anymore. All the little things I really loved, I just kind of come to resent or come to hate. And that was the point when I decided I needed a change. So I thought, should I go to Australia and use this working holiday visa that I have? Should I go back to the UK and try and go to university? And it was at that point that I decided to get into the fitness industry. And, as I mentioned, I didn't really see where it would go, but definitely turned out to be one of the best decisions I ever made.
And what was it? What was it in you that decided? I mean, you said you had an interest in the entrepreneur, like you like the idea of working for yourself. But obviously, I'm looking back now and seeing you as this very successful gym owner and coach. But it all started as a clothing retailer selling clothes back to the UK and sell it. What was it that got you into selling clothes? Was it purely just the idea of running your own business? Do you have a passion in clothing? Is that something you're interested in?
Not particularly, no. I've always liked the idea, and I still do to this day. I just love business. I love the idea of providing solutions for people and creating a business out of it. It's still, I love it to this day. And I'm sure it's the same for you, Ed. You've got all these other ideas and you think, God, if I could clone myself, I would love to do this and I would love to do that. And there's a few projects now that I have on the side. And I just love the idea so much. I'm going to try and carve out some time to do it. And I think I've kind of always had that. I think I love hearing about my friends' businesses now and issues they're having with it or successes they're having with it and trying to kind of help out where I am. And then it's just the whole idea of, you want to work for yourself, right? You want to create your own thing. You want to have control of it. And with that, I think it's important to say that I actually really liked going from working for myself to going to work for someone else because it was in an industry that I didn't know. There's no way I could have started Base at the beginning. And even to this day, let's say, I don't know, I sold Base or something. So, I left Base for some reason later down the line. I would definitely be happy to go and work for a company that I really believed in, had values that I could really get behind in a really strong mission. I could definitely do that now, and that would definitely still excite me. So I think, some people are like, I don't want to work for anyone else. I'm building up someone else's dream. But I really didn't feel like that going to work at the lab. It really felt like a great opportunity to learn more about the industry. So I threw myself in as an absolute novice. And of course, as you know, going through the process of becoming a coach, there is just so much to learn, right? You're on a constant journey of progression. And for those first few years, you don't really know much at all, right? It's, as a coach, you're just brand new, you're completely green. So, it was probably like 3 or 4 years into that journey before I really start to feel ready, just from a fitness perspective, and then also like a management perspective, management and running a business perspective, anywhere near ready to set up my own thing. And then there was about a year of really sort of making the decision, seeing if there was perhaps potential to stay at the lab and become more involved there, pulling in business partners. And then it kind of shifted back to like, okay, now I've got enough experience here and I feel kind of ready to set up Base. Now I'm ready to go and set up my own thing. So I think too many people are like, I don't want to build up someone else's dream, but I think that's sometimes a misguided way to look at it. And then of course, there's a whole other conversation is, everybody needs to ask themselves, well, are you really suited to owning a business? It's really not for everyone as it is. So, that time at the lab was really important. I felt ready to set up Base, but, I wasn't really all that ready. There was certainly a lot that I had to learn. And I really realized that, a few months into the journey at Base. But I think it at least gave me that confidence to start the thing. And also to pull in investors as well, because I had that initial confidence. And so they saw that, they saw I was confident, they saw my experience. So, they were prepared to back me.
Yeah, you're so right about that concept of like, not everyone is ready to run a business. I think, running a business and being a leader or a manager, like essentially you are accepting the role or accepting the successes and failures on behalf of other people. And for many people, that's a really big burden and a really big responsibility to take. When I look back at myself and I think back to childhood years, like I always relished the opportunity to be a captain or a leader in anything. It's, I think back to every sports team. I started playing rugby and football at 6 years old. Like I was always wanting to be that captain. So I think naturally I always wanted and envisioned myself being the leader of something. And I actually thrive with the pressure of knowing that these people, like I have to take responsibility for them, and I actually enjoy that. And similarly, I have to take responsibility for failures as well, just as much as successes. But it's funny in the fitness industry because we have this perception that we start as a coach and we finish as a gym owner, and that is a natural progression of where a coach should go. And I have to be honest, like in my early days, I thought that was a natural progression of a coach as well. But as we become more experienced, realize, what, some people just actually never cut out to do that, and that's absolutely okay. Doesn't make them better or worse than anyone else who wants to be that role. We're just all a bit different. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, I can certainly relate to that. I always like to sort of step up and take a leadership role. If I look back to when I was at school, public speaking was another thing altogether. I absolutely hated that. So I've got on a whole journey of getting better at it. But in terms of like leadership and stepping up, I can certainly relate to that. And then again, I think, I do very much agree in terms of coaches that look at a managerial position or a gym owner position and think that's progression, but it isn't necessarily if you're really not suited to that and you're really not going to enjoy that. I mean, being a manager or being a leader is hard. It's difficult. It gives you things that keep you up at night. And being a coach doesn't. You can kind of get excited about that, more than any other emotion. You really look forward genuinely to see your clients. You can detach a lot easier as well. And so what I've seen now as a gym owner, that progression from coach to manager is actually a really difficult one. And we've made some mistakes with that for sure, putting people in roles that they really weren't suited for, maybe not training them well enough, but also not seeing really that it's not the right role for them, and really trying to get down to the reasons that they want to do it. But actually, they see that as progression. Okay, I'm a manager now. The title is a bit better. Actually, the pay usually isn't as good, because if you're a coach doing a lot of hours, you can actually earn really, really good money. But it's not really progression if that's not the right path for you. And I think that's where a lot of coaches get a little bit stuck. There's a lot of other routes you can go down. I've done some podcasts on this as well. There's all sorts of other ways you can make more money. You can do like online programming, like what you guys have done, as a way of kind of increasing your income. You can specialize in a particular area as a coach as well. You can do education for coaches. We've found that to be a better route for a lot of our coaching team that want to do a bit more and get a bit more involved. They can train the trainers, and that's like a cool direction for them to go in. So progression is everyone's own personal journey, not necessarily just like a bigger title or more responsibility. And I think that's something that's tough, and I'm sure you can relate to that in the fitness industry.
And I think it's this isn't only a reminder to coaches who are maybe climbing that ladder or thinking about that ladder now, but it's also a message to managers that you need to find people who have a passion for the role and who have the skill set and are good at the role as well. And it's essentially, a marrying of those two things, a skill set and a passion, that will decide or dictate whether maybe someone is right for that managerial role. And I think also an important thing in your organization is to make sure that you're not necessarily putting people who do want management responsibilities on a pedestal. Because obviously if you create that culture with your organization, then people are going to think, well, if it's more highly regarded to be a manager, then I need to be a manager, even if it's not something I want to do or it's not something I'm good at.
I totally agree. And I actually think as a manager or a leader, full stop, it's reframing that idea that you're their boss or they work for you. I see it very much as being the other way around. Like if we look at our fitness managers, I see them as there to serve the coaches really, and to make their lives as easy as possible, or as smooth and as efficient as possible, to make them better, to educate them, to give them the right feedback, rather than like, right, I'm your boss, you got to do what I say. And that's huge. I think that's really important. And so that's what we try and, coach our managers to do. Like, you are there to make these coaches as good as possible. They should really feel like you're there for them, not like you have to be there for the manager as a coach. So definitely agree with that.
Tell me about, you talked about burnout and loss of motivation in your first, when you first started buying these clothes and selling them. What was it that led to you being burnt out? Well, why did you lose your passion?
It's a good question. Not one that I've really considered closely before, but I would say looking back now, it was really just the lack of direction. I think I'd got it to a stage where I was making decent money. I didn't really have to do much. I could run around as a 20-something in Bangkok and just have a laugh and have a lot of fun. And I don't think there was any real vision or goal for the business. All the things that really excited me at the beginning, I just made up some logo with some font and we put it in a little slip that we put in with the clothing. And we had like a very basic website that I made up on one of the free website creating sites. And like all of that, I just absolutely loved finding new designs, taking photos of them, building the business, finding new customers. I loved all of it. And if I look back now, I got a bit lazy. I didn't really have much drive to really build the business because I got it to a certain level. And so because there was no underlying sort of mission that I had or anywhere that I wanted to be, once I was making enough money to live the life I wanted to live, I just kind of went on cruise control. And so then I really lost drive and motivation, but it was just doing fine for a few years. So then when it came to that stage where I needed to throw myself back into the business, I realized that I couldn't do it. And there was actually a moment when it really hit me. So I used to love going to some of the markets in Bangkok where we got our clothing. I loved the busyness, the hustle and bustle, the finding designs, speaking to the suppliers. My Thai became good enough that I could talk to the suppliers and tell them what I wanted. And I just loved every part of it. It was just, sort of quite surreal, I guess, having grown up in Bristol to be doing all of this, but I loved it. And there was a moment where I was walking through the market, kind of towards the time when it was starting to go downhill, and it was really busy. And I was looking around, I just thought I'd rather be anywhere else in the world now, apart from here. And it was kind of in that moment that I realized there's just no way I can turn this business around because I've lost all drive and all motivation. Now, I think you need to sort of go through these things to understand yourself better and to understand what you want. And so with Base, I have a strong mission, we have strong values, and I know where I want to go with it and everything else. But I think and so going back, I could do that now. I think I could have done some really cool stuff. I could have commissioned some designers perhaps to make our own clothing rather than buying the local ones. I could have had a proper online store and invested into that, and could now go back in time and do that. But I just wasn't ready for it. I kind of had to go through that. I had to have that failure in the end. I mean, I see it as a successful time. I mean, I learned so much and it funded my lifestyle and kept me in Thailand. But at the end, it failed. And I feel like I had to go through that to have these reflections, to learn that, and then to do better in the business that I have now.
Yeah, I bet it was a really exciting prospect, like starting Base from scratch, knowing that you'd already had that experience of starting another company from scratch and probably a whole bunch of lessons that you could apply to Base, and probably allowed you to accelerate with Base and just get to the point where you are now, probably a lot faster than you might have done had that been your first ever business.
Yeah, I think the first business, it was like just, an added layer of maturity, I guess, is probably the best way to put it. I think in terms of preparing me for Base, it was more the work I did at the lab, seeing what we did well there, seeing a business run, and then being part of the management team and running that company. And at Base, I really had pretty much a list of things that I love and things that we're doing really, really well, and things that, now that we're starting again and we've got a totally blank slate, here's things that I think should change. And that was really, really useful to sort of have that. Because it's very hard to change a culture. As a manager in the lab, there were certain things that I tried to change that were just difficult. But when we started Base, from day one, this is how it is. And there's some stuff that we got right. And of course, a whole load of stuff that we didn't get right. I've had to sort of adjust that, or we've had to adjust that as a team along the way as well. One example of that stands out is, I think in the fitness industry generally, and this is having been to a lot of gyms around the world, coaches don't get to the class early enough. They don't set things up well enough. They're not there to greet the clients as they come through the door. And this was something I really wanted to nail properly at Base. So we said, right, 15 minutes before the class, absolute latest, you must be there setting everything up. The workout's up on the board. It's all pre-planned. You never just make it up as you go along, which again, I've seen a lot. All the equipment is out and you're ready to greet the clients as you come in. Now we've actually increased that period of time, but we started off with 15 minutes and it worked really well from day one, pretty much. I remember a coach came in, it must have been about 5 minutes before the session, and was really super apologetic. Like, oh, I'm really sorry I'm late. I'll get things set up. And I kind of knew then that we'd got it right, because in many gyms that I've been to, they run in a few minutes before, and that's just normal. Whereas this time, this coach had come in 5 minutes before, so still just enough time to get things set up. And he kind of knew that he'd not done a good thing and needed to sort of be better next time. And then I just said to him, look, don't worry, it happens, but just try and be 15 at least. If anything, aim for like 20 to 30, then you've got enough time. And we never had any issues again. So whilst we didn't get all of those things right at the beginning, that's just one example of something that we really nailed and we've carried through all the way for 5 years.
Let's talk about Base then. So Base is, I think you guys kind of class yourself as a fitness studio, don't you? So you guys offer your group classes, personal training, and private group classes. That's your main service offering. Did some research on the website. Am I right?
Yes.
Awesome. So you've been a manager at Lab now, and you have this vision to start your own thing. How did this conception of the idea of base, like where did that all come from? Why did you choose to go down this route? Yeah, tell me that story.
Yeah, so it's funny to look back, because when I was working at the lab, I was like, okay, I'm ready to set up my own thing now. And so it was actually like a mentor of mine at the time who was a client. He came on as my first business partner. And so I left the lab and we were ready to sort of set up base. And he was like, right, okay, so what's going to be different about base? What's going to be your USP? What's going to be a differentiator? And I was kind of like, right, we're going to be the biggest, baddest gym in Bangkok. You know, our standards are going to be higher than everywhere else. And he was like, it needs more than that. You know, every gym is going to say that, right? You go to any of the chain gyms, any boutique, and they're all going to say, yeah, we're the best. We've got the best coaches, the best customer service. And that really kind of got me thinking, like, shit, what is base? Like, what will make base different? And so that kind of set me off on my journey of like, okay, what are we going to do? What kind of training do I like? What do I think Bangkok's fitness industry needs? And then during that time, I was doing a bit of traveling. I was in New York. I went to a lot of the gyms there and in London as well. And I really liked the cardio and strength mix, kind of a la Barry's or One Rebel or Orange Theory. And that was something which I felt was missing in Bangkok. So we created our own concept, which was a mix of cardio and strength. For the cardio side, we used treadmills, rowing machines, and bike. And then for strength work, we used all the tools that we loved: barbells, kettlebells, dumbbells, and we had our own particular concepts and our own particular mix. Now, that was a strong USP from the start, because no other gym was really doing that in Bangkok. It was all kind of, I would say, more generic circuit training, generally, with not much cardio equipment. So that in itself was a bit of a USP to start. But we felt like we wanted something a bit stronger. We wanted a little bit more. So we really wanted to introduce a system of tracking and recording results as you went through a base group class. And that's gone through like a whole evolution, which I'll go through quickly. So at the beginning, we had whiteboards, and at the end of each set, so it would be 5 minutes or it would be 7 minutes, typically, people would write down the distances they'd run on the treadmill or the weights that they'd lifted, you know, on the particular dumbbell set or barbell set. And then the coach would take a photo of that, send it to front desk. They would put it in an Excel spreadsheet, and then the clients would have access to that spreadsheet. So as you can imagine, that broke down really quickly. It didn't work very well for various reasons. Things got missed. It was just way too complicated. So we were like, okay, let's nail it down to a once a month session. So we called that session Baseline. We put it on the schedule once a month, and we ran it over a weekend, and clients would come in and do some standardized cardio and strength sets. They would write down their scores on a piece of paper, and front desk then would put it into PDFs for each client individually and email it to them. It was a lot of work, but it was doable. It was manageable. And what was really cool about it is that clients loved it. And we could show clients, okay, your strength is improved, 23%, your cardio is improved 18%. We had an in-body scan. So, your body composition is heading the right way towards your goals. And clients really liked it. But there were a few drawbacks. If they were busy that weekend and they missed the session, then it would be 2 months. Or what we found would happen is people would be like, oh, I haven't really trained that hard this month, so I'm not going to go to the baseline session. I'll just give it a miss, which kind of like defeats the whole purpose of it. So we made a decision about 4 years ago now, so about 18 months into our base journey, to build a tech-based system of tracking and recording results. And that's just been a whole evolution over the last 4 years. It took us about a year just to link in our system with MindBody, our software, and to have it so that clients could record their results. But at the beginning, we didn't have anything to show or display to the clients. We were just assuring them that we did store their data, and we would present it to them very nicely down the line. Then we started to introduce like a scoreboard into the class so people could see what their stats were. They could then log in through their desktop and see all of their stats, all of their results. Then we built in like a system where coaches could see their previous stats, and they could start to base the coaching around that. So if Ed, your 1 kilometer time trial time, which is one of our standardized sets at base, was 4 minutes, 20 seconds, the coach could kind of help you beat that if you were feeling good, tell you what pace to go to push you at the right times. And so that was really cool to add in that element of group class training that was really very personalized. Recently, we've launched an app. So that has all of your stats, all of your data, all of the programs that are upcoming over the next week. We want to keep the focus on how much you're improving rather than the competitive development, but there is a competitive side to it. If you want to look at the leaderboards and see how you're doing, you can have a look at that, and you can also opt out of that as well. But we kind of want the whole focus to be, Ed, you've come to base here on day one, here is your baseline scores, and we're going to see how that improves. And that's been received really well. And so it's been really cool to kind of look back, have that initial idea of a differentiator and a USP, and just kind of see how that's evolved over the last few years. Now we're at this stage where we're collecting the data. There's all sorts of cool things that we can do with it. And it's just been so cool to see it be received so well. You know, clients love seeing their stats, seeing themselves improve. We can use that for testimonials. And we haven't really quite officially launched it yet, but we've just built in social features. So, let's say, Ed, you were going to base Hong Kong and you hit your personal best on a barbell bench press, let's say. It would notify me next time I log in if I'm a friend of yours, and I can comment on it, I can like it, and we can kind of celebrate each other's achievements together. So that was the initial idea, and that's kind of how it's evolved over the years. And I think this sets us up nicely for, expanding to other markets as well.
That's so cool. It's I resonate a lot with our business. When we first opened up Coastal, we said that the athlete tracking side has to be a part of what we're doing. And, being essentially a CrossFit affiliate, whiteboards were everything. And it was all about the whiteboard. But the problem with the whiteboard was that obviously, CrossFit coaches would write everyone's scores up, but you'd wipe the whiteboard. And so essentially, there's your data all gone. And so then we started encouraging our members to bring like little notebooks. And so you got to have your own training diary, you got to log all your scores, make sure you write this down. So that was, I guess, a first iteration of it all. And then, when we went to a gym and we had our first gym, we actually used Modify. And I remember we went down to the CrossFit Games in 2013. We were going to open up a gym late that year, and Modify with this new software. Like they hadn't really launched yet, but they were like, we're going to be this technology. We're going to set up software so people can track their results. We were like, we have to have this. We hung out with these guys at their tent at the CrossFit Games, probably spent more time than actually watching the CrossFit Games. To be honest, I didn't even know much about CrossFit. It was just one of my colleagues that wanted to go. And we were like, we have to have this thing in our gym. And so we were like one of the first gyms, I think, outside of the US to have it. And that evolved and evolved and evolved and evolved and evolved. So it's really cool to see that that's something that you recognize as something really, really important as well for your
Absolutely.
gym.
Yeah, I think CrossFit's, really done that well, right? And they've changed the industry in so many ways, I think, positively. And that's definitely one of them, just the tracking and recording. But yeah, like you said, I've been to CrossFits that have these, like a wall that's just turned into like a blackboard, and there's just kind of numbers scribbled all over it. And again, I think that can be a little bit intimidating for new people coming in as well. Whereas if there's a proper tech-based system where they can just tap in, I've been to a few CrossFits before where they have a computer by the side. This is a few years ago now. I'm sure it's evolved. And yeah, people love to see that. They love to see themselves improve. And as a coach, you want to say to someone like, hey, you have got better, you have got stronger, and I can show you that.
What are some of the biggest advantages you've seen as a business owner by having that tracking software? And I guess the accountability where people have their history logged in there and they're actually able to chart and measure progress. What are some of the biggest improvements you've seen? Maybe from like a retention standpoint, from a customer satisfaction standpoint?
I think there's two main sort of directions to go with that. One is kind of what we've discussed. It's just so powerful to be able to say to members, this is how much stronger you're getting. This is how much you've improved. And sometimes, as you all know, Ed, clients don't get the results that they necessarily want in terms of weight loss. Let's say they might jump on the scales and they're, 69 kilograms, and they jump on again and they're 70. If you can go a little bit deeper into it, you can still get them excited, and you can still maybe explain why that's happened, and you can still celebrate other wins, and perhaps look at nutrition if they still want to drop some weight, rather than just like, sorry, the training hasn't worked for you, which is, I think, what maybe I used to say at the beginning of my fitness journey, if that happened. Whereas now we can say, okay, if you want to drop, we can do an in-body scan for a start. So we can say, okay, we've actually gained muscle. Your body fat percentage has stayed the same. So we still want to see that come down. Let's build a plan for that. But actually, you came in wanting to perform better. You came in wanting to get stronger, and we can show that you've done that. Also, what we've seen, which is really cool with that, is people come in for, and I'm sure you've seen this a lot as well, they come in for fat loss and they stay for other reasons altogether. So once they start to understand the process of getting stronger, of seeing body composition change, or seeing their fitness levels go up, maybe, doing a Spartan race or something like that, once they see and experience that, and you can show them that with data, they stay for completely different reasons. And I've seen time and again in the industry, that is what really sparks long-term change rather than kind of hitting number on the scale. So clients love seeing it. The data inspires other people as well. So if we do a testimonial and we kind of nail down specific numbers as well as their personal story, we find that to be super powerful. So that helps inspire other people to come to base and start their fitness journey. The other side of it is it's just fun. Like some people just like to see the numbers up on the screen and they like to know they're just getting a little bit better. They probably don't go in the app. They probably don't care that much how much they've improved overall, but it just adds this element of fun into the process. At the end of our classes, people will be taking photos, tagging their friends. Coaches can celebrate wins with them, which kind of makes them feel good. So they don't really care so much about getting deep into the data, but it's just fun for them. And when we're providing a solution like that, which not many other gyms are, or perhaps no other gyms of our type in Bangkok, then of course that definitely helps with retention. It helps people share their stories a lot more, as I mentioned, on their social media. It helps us tell more powerful stories, which again definitely brings a lot more business into base. So yeah, the end result of that is clients that are more sticky, looks more interesting for new clients coming in, younger demographic, like all of this stuff as well. When you have an app and you're presenting data to them, this is kind of the stuff that younger people are looking for as well. So yeah, definitely see numerous strong business benefits linked to what we've done. Absolutely.
Really cool that you guys were the pioneers to actually go ahead and create your own app as well. We piggybacked on other people who were doing a great job of it already, but I can imagine that was almost a business in itself and going down that rabbit hole.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's been a really interesting journey. So the agency that did our branding and did our website also do development as well. So they've been on this whole journey with us. They really understood what we were trying to do. Yeah, it's been expensive for sure. Definitely put a lot of money into it, but we're really happy with that investment and what it's produced. And we did actually look at some off-the-shelf solutions, but no one could sort of effectively track our system. So we really wanted to create our own thing. And again, if we were to expand with a franchise model or something like that, of course, it's stronger to have our own system that is ours, it's proprietary, and we can adapt it as we want, was kind of important to us. So yeah, it's been quite a journey, mate, but a really interesting one, and definitely learned a lot on that side as well. One little point with that, which is quite funny, like you think something's going to be easy and you put it to your development team and they're like, no, we've kind of got to rebuild that whole thing now. And you sort of think, oh, surely you can just change a line of code. Surely it's not that tough. And it's like, no, actually that's going to take us like 20 hours and it's going to cost you a lot of money. That
is genuinely my very naive opinion on it. I'm like, well, these guys are doing it. Just copy what they're doing and stick our logo on it. Surely it's not that hard. And you do speak to some people who are like, oh, this will be easy. And you're like, oh, will it actually be easy? Oh yeah, I've worked in tech before. That won't be a problem at all. And then you pitch it to someone. You're like, actually, that's going to take us a year and a lot of money. Anyway, yeah. Hats off to you. So, that was one of the things that you set out from the start was going to be a unique selling point, the whole tracking side of things. What would you say now is Base's unique selling point?
I think so. Of course, the tracking side of things is still very unique and it's very much tied into our particular system as well. So that's something that's still very strong. I think now, one thing that we're recognized for, which again, it's not that sexy USP, it's not that sexy differentiator, but we've just worked so hard at like just the overall standards. So for the coaching, for front desk team, we've really invested a lot into them. And there was actually a point about maybe a year or two into our journey when I realized that we'd done some great work with the coaches. We were really happy with the training process to get them up to scratch. It was so cool seeing these coaches go from like brand new novice coaches into, really industry leading coaches. You could put them in Singapore, you could put them in Hong Kong, and they would absolutely smash it. And we were getting them there quickly. And it just felt great. And it just felt amazing. Then we kind of realized that we'd kind of neglected our front desk team. And it kind of went against one of our values that everyone's always progressing, everyone's always getting better, regardless of where you are in the company. And, myself and the management team, we kind of realized that we'd neglected that side of it. The standards weren't great, not much was systemized, the training wasn't great at the beginning, and it wasn't befitting of the experience that we'd created. So me and a few people on the team just kind of put a lot into that area, into the training, into even just getting the team together more often, having a get together at least once every few months, having some drinks at base. Even we kind of turn one of the bases into a little bit of a party zone or go out for a meal. In terms of reviews with the team, so the managers would be doing more frequent one-to-ones. I think a lot of companies say they do appraisals and one-to-ones, but they probably just happen every year or so. So getting in like a much stricter scheduling with that. And so with that, and it took a long time as well, I think from deciding like, God, we really need to work on this. And the way that we knew we needed to work on it was because our best members of staff were leaving quickly and our worst members of staff were hanging around for a long time and were hard to get rid of. And it was that realization. I think there was one or two great people that left. And I was like, why have they left? They're obviously not being served. We definitely need to do a lot more for them. And so it probably took about 12 to 18 months to kind of make that right. And we've still got some way to go for sure, but we've just seen such big improvements there that I think, although it's not that sexy USP that you do need and that we do have with the tracking and stuff, just the overall standards, I think, is something that you don't see very often. I think in Bangkok, and even, visiting New York, where you'd expect everything to be great, a lot of gyms actually don't do it well. So I think that's something that does really help us stand out. And I think that's something that our clients do appreciate.
Yeah, I have to resonate with that whole, what you just said there. We used to put so much emphasis on the coaching, on the program, on the equipment, on the layout of the coaching floor. But remembering that operations team plays such an important supporting role in enabling the coaches to do their job. And it'd be an oversight for so long. The front desk team was always looked at as a position where it's like, well, let's just get part-time staff, university students who are looking for another job, someone who's just got a friendly face or likes to have a conversation. But actually, this is a full-time job that serves such an important role. It's often the very first engagement that someone has when they step into your gym for the very first time. And it's,
last.
And the
it's
last,
the first and the last, right?
And who's looking after that person when they step off that gym floor? And they spend, there's more connection that happens off the gym floor than actually on it, because that's just an hour. Like, who's engaging with them, who's staying in touch with them, who's answering their questions, who's speaking to them when they're waiting for their class and finishing it. So I totally see that. And it took us a really, really long time to get to that point, to acknowledge that it was a really important role.
There was one time in New York. So me and my girlfriend, whenever we travel, we'll go to all the top gyms and we'll make notes on the whole experience afterwards. And we went to a very well-known gym in New York, this big chain that's still there today. And, it's a great brand. The class was awesome. They had 2 coaches in the class and they were both fantastic. Everything that you would expect from a New York fitness class. But when we walked in to check in, the girl was just eating sushi. She was kind of on the computer, I assume, doing her own thing. It was our first time stepping into this studio. And she was just like, okay, sign there. And we just kind of signed in. I think she looked at it. She's like, okay, cool. And so we walked through. Absolutely nothing when we walked out. There was no goodbye, thanks. How was the workout? Oh, it's your first time. How was it? Nothing like that. And it was kind of hard to get over that. Our feeling afterwards was like, I didn't really feel particularly welcomed there. I didn't really feel like I wanted to go back. And it would have just taken a bit of eye contact, a smile. Oh, it's your first time. Awesome. Let me just tell you a couple of things about the gym. Maybe 60 seconds. It wasn't busy. So she certainly couldn't use that as an excuse. And I really realized in that moment, I need to make sure this isn't happening at base. This cannot be happening at base because everything else was so great. And actually with a few little tweaks, with maybe a little bit more training or a bit more accountability, whatever it might be, it would have been 10 out of 10. Whereas as it was like maybe 7 or 8, but even though it's 7 out of 10 overall, that I still had that overwhelming feeling of like, just don't really want to go back. So that was interesting to experience on the client side, because often you don't get that. When you walk in to do a workout at Coastal, or I walk in to do our workout at Base, we're probably going to get the best of service, all of the smiles and everything else. So we don't get to experience that. So flipping that was really cool. And I would certainly suggest any gym owners do that and visit other gyms.
Yeah, I mean, that's clearly left a lasting impression on you. All these years later, that's probably had more of an impact and more of a memory than the actual good experience on the coaching floor itself.
Yep, absolutely.
How has your role evolved at Base? So, when you first started Base, it sounds like you were a bit of a visionary. You had the concept. It also sounds like you were doing some coaching as well. How has that evolved over the years to what you're doing now?
I went through the typical journey of, doing way too much at the beginning, coaching a lot. You would do a PT consultation. They're like, I want to train with you. You're like, all right, I'm sure I can squeeze you into my schedule, and just taking on way too much. And I kind of realized after maybe 5 or 6 months, especially as I started to get new coaches in, that I didn't have time to focus on them as much, to build them up, to train them up and everything else. So I started to sort of phase myself out. I think I made a decision about 2 years in to not do personal training anymore. I just felt like I couldn't give a high enough level of service that, PT clients should get, even in terms of checking in with them outside the class and everything else. So I decided to not do personal training anymore, but I still continue to do group class, and I still continue to do it to this day. One is because I kind of want to keep my finger on the pulse and see how baseline is going. Two, I feel like I can connect with a larger group of people. So, if I do like a Saturday morning at base and it's really busy and really lively, it's a good chance to just have a chat with people, get their feedback on stuff, and just kind of connect with the wider community. And I enjoy it, is the third reason. I still enjoy doing the classes. I still find it a lot of fun. So I kind of cap it at about 4 per week. 4 classes would be like my maximum. So as I stepped away from doing coaching, just focused more on the wider business. And that, again, that's been a journey as well. I think as a business owner, you have to sort of keep telling yourself not to get too stuck in with all the details, not to micromanage people, to trust people, to build a team that can work on projects and do things without you. And over time, and especially as we've expanded from 2 locations to 3 locations, there's only one of you. You can only be in one place at any one time. So you've got to build the systems, you've got to build the team that you can trust to do a good job. You've actually then got to trust them and really let them run with things. And so then you go to more of like the longer term vision of the company, where you want to go next. The stuff like this podcast, right? Getting base out by doing podcasts like this, by doing the Fitness Business Asia podcast, by going to events such as the Fit Summit, by making key hires, or by building up and training the key members of the team, such as head of marketing, or we have like a general manager that looks after all 3 branches, the fitness management team, and just trying to empower them to do a great job, I think is where my time needs to be spent. Especially during COVID, when all sorts of things were happening, definitely got dragged into some things that I usually wouldn't be doing, which was quite nice actually, to sort of keep busy over a tough time and over lockdowns and closures. But that's something that even to today, I do still need to tell myself sometimes, should I be the person doing this? Yeah, maybe not. Don't get it right all of the time, for sure. Luckily, I got some people that are close to me at base who are fantastic. They're really great at their job. I trust them. They're really smart. So they'll be quick to tell me like, hey, I don't think you should be doing this. Maybe we can get someone else too. So it's nice to have those people close to me as well. They can also kind of keep me in check.
So let me ask you, Jack, if I was to ask your colleagues at base, what is Jack really good at? What would they say?
Good question. I think they would say that I have a strong vision of the company, that I communicate that well to the team, that I'm fair. I think that's something that's really, really important to me. I've been, and I think this really helps, again, going through the journey that I've been through and having been a coach as well, and having been on that side and knowing the effects of decisions that are made by the company. I think that's really, really helped me to be as fair as I possibly can, to give as much as I possibly can where the business can afford it. And also, if there is something that maybe they won't like, to be completely and absolutely transparent with that. And I feel that if you look at our retention rates in terms of our whole team, but especially our coaching team, who by and large have stayed with us, for years. I think over COVID, we only lost 2 coaches out of 26 coaches who went to work for their family business. So I think if I look at that, that's one of the things I'm certainly most proud of. I would like to think that's because people feel like I've got their best interests at heart. I'm fair and transparent, and that makes them feel good about working at base. So I would hope, Ed, that it would say some of those things.
I've sent a survey out to all your staff, so I'll let you know what it comes back with.
Please let me know.
We were talking a little bit earlier about when we were talking about managers and finding the right people to be managers, the importance of that combination of loving your job but being really good at it as well. When you look at the things that you do now, as someone who's been owning this business for as long as you have, how much of the daily tasks that you do you love, and how many of those daily tasks do you loathe?
That's such a good question. There's certainly things you do that I don't enjoy doing, but I love the fact that I'm doing something that's helping the business, and that kind of overrides any other feeling that I have. I think it's stereotyping a little bit here, but we've certainly had some great young staff, but we've had some young staff, they just want to do stuff that's fun. I had one who says, I don't do anything that I don't want to do. I only do things I'm really passionate about and I really want to do. And to see his sort of work ethic and where he applied himself, I didn't think that was a good thing or something to be proud of. You sometimes have to do things that you don't enjoy doing in the moment, but you feel good knowing that it's having a positive effect on the business. You know, I hate having to let someone go, or I hate having to give someone a warning, or even pull them aside and said, look, this isn't good enough, or this isn't, you know, acceptable at base, or, you know, something that's not going to be an easy conversation. But I really like the feeling of doing something that's going to make them better, that's going to move them forwards, that's going to help the business overall. You know, even if it's letting someone go, it's the hardest conversation you can really have. But if at the end of it, you know, you've done something that's right for the business, you can still feel good about it. If there's anything that I'm doing that I really don't enjoy, that isn't really moving the business forwards, that definitely goes back to what we were talking about previously. Like, I need to find someone else to do that. We need to hire someone, because if I'm spending time and energy doing something I don't like that somebody else can do and isn't really driving the business forwards, then I shouldn't be doing it. So, you know, everything I do now that I don't enjoy, you know, let's say doing payroll. So I'm still involved in the payroll process, you know, eventually definitely like to get someone else doing that. Do I really enjoy that? No, but it helps me keep an eye on the business. I know exactly which coach is doing well, how many hours they're doing. I get to see all sorts of data on them, which otherwise would be given to someone else. So I still, at this stage of our business, see that as something that I should be doing. At some stage, I'll decide, okay, we need to get someone else on to do that, or perhaps we'll pass that to our accounting team, and, you know, my hands will be washed of that. So, yeah, I think that's kind of how I approach it, and I think that kind of mostly keeps me on the right path. I mean, is it similar for you, Ed? You must do things that you don't like in the moment, but they help the business, and you feel good about that?
You know what? It was interesting. I was listening to a podcast on the High Performance podcast the other day, which I'm a massive fan of. And they had someone talking about what was a threshold that dictates whether someone loves their job or not. And the threshold was 20%. So if of all the tasks that you want to do on a daily basis, if you love 20% or more of the tasks, that means you love your job. And that was based on like worldwide data on a company that had been collecting data. That's their job. And I was like, wow, as low as 20% dictates whether someone loves their job. And so I actually thought about it myself. So, you know, I had a mental pen in my head for a couple of days where every task that I did, I would kind of put it into one of the two columns, loathe or love. And genuinely at the end of the 2 days, there was so little on my loathe list. And there was so much on my love that I would really say I was up at the 90% mark. But it's interesting the way that you took the question, because you talked about, you know, having to let someone go, having to, you know, maybe have that hard conversation with someone about standards. And I completely agree. Like, you know, that particular thing didn't happen to feature in those 2 days, because that's something that's a little bit more ad hoc that just comes part and parcel of being a manager. But yeah, there are definitely things like that you have to deal with as a manager that aren't enjoyable. Doesn't matter how cutthroat you are. I can't think there's anyone in the world that loves doing that stuff. But generally speaking, I would say so much of what I do, I actually genuinely love. Now, if you'd asked me that question 10 years ago, I'd probably say it was more like 40% love, 60% hate.
Yeah, I can certainly relate to that. As you were saying that, I was kind of running through the tasks that I do in my mind, what I've done today, what I will do after this call, and almost all of it's in the love column, to be honest with you. You know, I'm still very involved in the marketing side. Yeah, I guess I didn't mention that much when you talked about my role. I just really enjoy that. I really like that. I work so well with our head of marketing, and, you know, we share a lot of ideas on the direction we should go in. And unfortunately, I'm still the one that has to do the copywriting because we don't really have anyone else who has the English ability. And so, yeah, I certainly love everything that's involved in the marketing side of it. I think with the difficult conversations, let's say, whether that's in the like or loathe column is more like how I feel afterwards that I handled it. I think if ever I look back and think I didn't really handle that very well, or I didn't leave us in a good place, I would feel bad about the whole thing. And so I really strive with any difficult conversation to like have reached some level of agreement with that person, for them to hopefully feel appreciative that I've even raised it in the first place. And we've made a plan of action to get better at this particular point. There's a conversation that I have to have tomorrow that's going to be a difficult one. And I hope at the end of it, he appreciates that I've raised it. We've come to a good place on it. He feels good that he's getting a little bit better. Maybe he doesn't even realize the thing that we're going to discuss and talk about, and we can all move forwards positively. If at the end of that conversation, I feel like he's just pissed off with me, you know, he doesn't agree with what I've said, I'm going to feel bad about that. So I think that can sometimes be the deciding factor. And the more of these conversations you have, and which is one of the reasons I think you need to embrace these conversations, the better you have at getting them and reaching that sort of positive consensus.
Yeah, hard conversations. It's short-term discomfort for long-term freedom. And I think we forget that. We shirk away from discomfort of it all, but really by not having that conversation, we have to live with that discomfort for a really, really, really long time.
For sure. And also it becomes a harder conversation later. Eventually you have to have that conversation. And it just gets harder and harder. And I think then that's the kind of thing that keeps you up at night, actually, I think, is when you do avoid that. And that's what just plays on your mind, you know? For me, I'll wake up at 4 a.m. and I'm just running through something. And it's like, if I don't address it and don't have that tough conversation. So yeah, I think you had to go through it. You have to, like you said, just throw yourself in and have the conversation and embrace it. And then you start to, you know, get a bit better at it, I guess, I hope.
I mean, it sounds like you're doing an amazing job as a manager and as a leader, Jack. I mean, I actually didn't realize that you had 3 gyms. So I'm curious to hear myself. We only have 1 gym. All of my staff pretty much work full time in-house. I get to see them every single day, have those relationships, have the conversations. But I can imagine it becomes a very different ball game when you've got 3 locations, 3 gyms. So how was that transition going from managing 1 place to now 2 to then 3? And what were some of the lessons involved in that?
Yeah, great question. So we started base in 2016 and we had a bad first 6 months. There's no other way to put it, really. The marketing side I love now, but we needed a hell of a lot of work at it at the beginning. And it was just something that I kind of had this feeling of, let's build it and they'll come. And that just didn't really happen. We had a few people coming on Guava Pass, which was like the class pass of the time. I think you guys had it in Hong Kong as well. Some friends or people that kind of knew of us in the industry that knew me or knew other coaches, but we were really struggling to get some decent traction. Then I kind of threw myself into the marketing side and kind of took that on as my baby. We didn't really have anyone doing the marketing. It was just chucking up Instagram posts randomly and hoping for the best. But I invested into that. And that then became the part of the job that I really loved. And when I brought on our current head of marketing as an intern 4 years ago, I was like, okay, this is what I'm doing. Let me teach you what I know and let's learn together. And she's just absolutely brilliant. And she's just been one of, our leading members of the team for sure up to this day. And so together we kind of built a proper marketing plan, a proper marketing strategy. We started putting out a podcast during the first lockdown, for example. We set up a proper YouTube channel to put out some stuff, which really helped with our SEO. We've started writing a whole ton of blog posts, which again, really, really helped with our SEO. If anyone's listening to this and they type in personal training Bangkok or group plus fitness Bangkok, well, we should come up number 1. And that's because of the energy and effort that myself and our marketing team have put into it. So, the first 6 months were tough. That first January was when we really started to get some traction with what we were doing with programs and marketing and everything else. January, February 2017 were good. And so then we got approached by another location, another space to open up there. We didn't really feel ready for it. We didn't really feel like we'd got the business to a stage where we could expand, but it was a real good deal. It was in a real good spot. And the landlord, the person that was developing this sort of co-working space and they wanted to have a gym there, was a real great guy to work with that my business partner knew. So we kind of thought this is a great opportunity. I don't think it's going to come up again quite this good. Let's just go for it and let's do it. And so the troubles that we had in the first location, we basically had all over again in the second location. Although we'd learned a lot from the first location, we didn't really know how to run 2. So kind of holes just sort of started popping up. And this was around the time that I noticed, front desk was just not up to standard. We didn't have a proper training process for front desk. And we kind of went through a process in the second gym that we'd already been through in the first. Things weren't working well, classes weren't busy. Our marketing was certainly better. So we were definitely much, much stronger in that particular area. But other holes started popping up. We had myself running back and forth. We had managers running back and forth, and it was tough. After 6 months, we just started ironing out some of those issues. And one of the big things was just developing more systems and processes. And we didn't really do that much in the beginning at all. It was all just sort of done on the fly. That can work with 1 gym. You still absolutely should not do it with 1 gym, but it can just kind of work if everyone knows what they need to do, even if it's not systemized. You still might find it hard to go on holiday for a month, but it can just about scrape by. But we saw that absolutely wasn't working with 2 gyms. So we really started digging down into even how do we open the branch? Well, you open the door, you turn on the computer, you turn on the lights, you make sure the gym space is good. And so we started building out processes for pretty much every part of running the gym. And that's just been a process that's run all the way to today. And as we look now to expand, we just want to build that out and develop that even more. When we opened our 3rd gym, from a marketing perspective, I feel like we really had it nailed. It might sound a little bit arrogant, but it really did feel like that. And we were profitable from day 1. We knew exactly how to bring people in. We knew the right kind of offer at the beginning to bring people in. We knew when to do a little promo and when to go to full price. And we just sort of felt like we could do that well and we could do that right. And I think, that was proven to be true in this particular case because we were profitable from day one. We had a big event at the beginning. We got the right kind of PR, local publications. By this time I was writing for BK magazine. So it was these kind of relationships that kind of helped to get out that PR message. And it felt like we pretty much had the marketing side nailed. But operationally, more holes started popping up for sure. Standards definitely dropped. Even though we'd made some progress, it drops again a little bit, I'd say, when we went to 3 locations. So since then, we've been trying to build out the systems and the processes with 10 gyms in mind. And so this is 2018, we set up our 3rd location. Since then, we've just been trying to, everything we do, it's like, if we had 10 locations, would this work? And that's really helped, I think, to make 3 gyms run much more smoothly. For sure, there's a lot of work that we need to do. We're actually going through a whole retraining process with our front desk team in a couple of weeks. We're really going to try and iron out some of the issues that have popped up, recently, like will always happen when you have new staff coming in, like when we reopened. But I feel like, with that mindset, it's really helped us run 3 gyms in a much stronger way. I would say if you've got 1 gym, and you only want to have 1 gym and you're happy with where you're at, still try and build things out as if you had 3 or 5. And that will help you if you want to sell it. For sure, you're going to need these kind of systems to show that the business can run without you. And also, if you just want to go on holiday for even a few days without worrying about things, or, a month back home or whatever it might be. So it's kind of been ironing out issues bit by bit, and rather than catching up to where we need to be, trying to get ahead of where we need to be. And that continues to be the mindset up to today, looking forwards to, hopefully expanding internationally.
Yeah, I love that. Love that concept of like envisioning 10 gyms. Could this work? I mean, it was certainly something that systems was something that came so late, so long after creating Coastal. But you often learn when you lose a key member of staff that you realize, just did things the right way without having to be told. And when that person goes, you're like, shit, I don't even know what that person was doing. How am I supposed to bring the next person in? And I think in the same way that you think about the 10 gyms, I always think, if I wasn't here tomorrow, who would do this job and how do we do it? And so, yeah, similarly for us, it's always a challenge. You're trying to create those systems, trying to create the ability for someone else to step in and do the job to the ability that we expect as a company. Hard.
Yeah, it's embarrassing to admit, but at the beginning of Base, I don't actually think we had anything. I really don't think we had a piece of paper or a doc online that really had anything. The training side we did, but operationally, and again, this is another example of I felt really ready to do Base. Hey, look at me, I've been a manager for a few years, I'm ready to do it. Let's bring in some investors. But I didn't even know to build out these systems. And that's, kind of cool to look back and just think, wow, if I was to set up any other business in any other industry, I would have so much of a better idea on how to do it. And, I guess I kind of links into the podcast. We talk about all of this stuff on the podcast. And the podcast was a resource that I didn't have when I started Base. And I kind of hope now, and I know now that we have new gym owners that can listen to the podcast and think, damn, I need to get some systems up and running. And of course, we've got, shows on that.
Yeah, something about culture, because I know you've talked about values. I think you've kind of dabbled with the concept of culture. When you talk about Base, it sounds like there is a culture there. There's a way that things are done. There's a belief, there's a vision. What often people say is that whilst the concept of a company having a culture makes sense, what actually exists within a business is subcultures. So, when you have different managers, each of those managers, whilst they may understand that this is the way that things should be done, they have their own way of doing things. And that trickles down to create these subcultures. So you can have 2 teams right next to each other in the same company who has this overarching culture of how things should be done. But what has happened, these 2 microcultures have been created. And as a result, you have one team who loves what they do, super bought in and massively passionate about their job. And you have the team right next to them who hates it or hates their job or hates the culture. So how have you maintained that culture as Base has grown? And you essentially now, I guess you have 3 teams essentially.
Yes, I would say that is a process of trial and error. I would say, much like pretty much everything else that we've done, like building systems, and then you go to a bigger gym and you realize the systems don't work. So you need to build better systems or take a closer look at what you have. Training, of course, has played a big part in that. So we've gone through that through that process, with systems. I would say it's similar to culture as well. We have certainly had that resonates a lot with me, what you were saying. We've had managers that have kind of had their own way of doing things. If I look back now, no one was really getting the right training. Front desk weren't really getting the right training to do their jobs properly. And it was very much like, look one time, do one time, now you're on your own kind of thing, you know, from the managers. But actually, when I look back, the managers also didn't really get training from me. And, you know, I think, again, it was all that, if I look back, it was kind of that divide between the coaching side is great and there's a real good vibe and the coaches share their knowledge and they help each other out and they cover each other's classes, they cover each other's clients. But again, it was neglecting that side of things, which definitely saw like a trickle down in terms of sort of bad culture, if you want to call it that, or culture that was inconsistent with our values. I think the way that we've improved that is, as these managers have left that maybe weren't quite consistent with our values, when we've hired new people, we've just been a lot more careful with who we've brought on. I've made sure that I've spent a lot more time with them. So, and that's really helped just in terms of like, yeah, how they manage their team, you know, seeing how they receive feedback from me and just seeing that we're on the same page values wise. If I look back to the early stage of the business, we brought on a manager who was just fantastic at sales and she did brilliantly. And we needed her at that time because sales weren't great. Excellent. I didn't even consider for a second if it was a good value fit or a culture fit. I didn't really know what the base culture or the base values were at that time, in that early stage. Now, when I bring on a manager, it's quite different. You know, I really would make sure that it is a good culture fit. They are going to manage in a way that I think brings out the best in people as well. They feel good that I, through my experience, are going to be investing in them, spending time with them. You know, we have a lot of contact time, myself and the branch managers and the fitness managers. And so I think that then helps to make sure that it does trickle down in the right way, rather than, as you said, have these little pockets. We had a few managers leave during COVID, and we promoted some of our front desk staff. Very new to management, but I knew they loved base. They loved what we did. They were proud to work for base. They had the right kind of attitude and demeanor. And I really thought they'd be good, but they just needed a lot of work. And they have been awesome. They have been awesome. And actually, that's one of the things through closures and lockdowns and everything else, which is one of the big positives for me. I feel like the culture now is better than it's ever been. Before, in the management team, there was a few people that didn't quite get on, didn't quite click and connect well. And we just don't have that now within the management team. We all get on so well. We all communicate very well, which I think is huge, and definitely one of my big sort of personal values as well, just being able to communicate well and reach a positive conclusion together. And so it's taken some time, it's taken some ironing out, but now that we have this strong management team, I feel if we bring on another manager, it's going to be very easy to see whether they fit into the culture that we have. And that way, because all the managers, you know, I think are on the same page and share similar values, again, it just trickles down to the rest of the team. Yeah. As you said at the beginning, it only takes one person who's not quite on board, you know, gossips a lot, something like that, that can spread real quickly. You know, comes in late as a manager, loses the respect of the team, you know, that can quickly spread. And, you know, that's something that we have seen and experienced.
So cool that you guys have values, and it's something you talk about a lot. And it sounds like, you know, you hire and fire based on your values, which is an amazing thing. You know, we're very much on board with that. You know, COVID for us as well was such a unique opportunity for the team to bond and get even closer. You know, not being open every day, we still turned up to work, into the gym 6 days a week. So that meant, you know, without running classes, being able to coach people, there was just a lot of contact time. And every time we've had a gym closure, we've always come out of it as a stronger team. And it's almost like as the gym gets up and running again, kind of we fragment a little bit, and then sounds terrible, you kind of need the next COVID closure to bring the team back together again. And every time we've closed, we've just learned from the last one, right? What do we have to do to maintain this relationship, to maintain this culture, you know, to keep this, you know, to keep what we've created over that time? It sounds like, and I think this is an important thing to raise, is that whilst we've talked a lot about systems, which is essentially creating processes, which I guess automate to an extent, or at least, you know, have what we do written down so someone can step in and do it. What you haven't shirked on is contact time. And I think in a people business where we have people who are executing our services, and, you know, we're not delivering just through television screens, that people are a big important part of both of our businesses, you still invest a lot of time in people and spending time with people.
That was something that yeah, absolutely. And that was something that we have had to improve on, because, you know, we were that company, unfortunately, a few years back, maybe before COVID, I guess, that we said we'd do appraisals every 3 months, but, you know, it would turn into 6 months, or it'd be like, we haven't seen each other for a while, right? Let's get something in the diary. So once we reopened and we had those managers leave and we promoted the front desk staff, I was like, let's meet up once a month for a coffee. And even if it feels like we've got nothing to talk about, let's just meet up anyway. And sometimes it's half an hour, sometimes it's an hour and a half. And we basically just go through the same questions as a guideline to a conversation. And it's pretty much, what do you think is going well? What do you think can be improved? Is there anything that I can help you with, that I can support you with? And how is each individual member of your team doing? It's something like that. We've got just 5 or 6 questions. And again, we've done it enough times now because we do it every single month, and we've got it in the diary for a year ahead. So there's no forgetting it. It's in all our Google calendars. We're definitely going to have these one-to-ones. And it's amazing some of the ideas that come up. Whereas actually it doesn't really feel like there's much to talk about when it feels like everything's going fine. But having that check-in, I think, is so important. So if anyone's listening to this and they run a business, do the same. Just meet up, have a quick coffee. It doesn't take very much time. And even if there really is nothing to talk about, it's just great to pull them out of the workplace and have a chat to them. And it's amazing what a change of environment can do. Often people will be, oh, I see them every day anyway. It's different. It's different. Yeah. Go somewhere else. It's not your business. Go somewhere private, and things will come out that otherwise wouldn't, I think.
Yeah, totally. That's one of the things that, having come out of this last COVID closure has just been a great reminder for me as a leader and as a manager that I need to make the time to invest in my staff, just to have a conversation. And like you said, very similar questions, what do you love? What do you loathe? What are your challenges? What are your goals coming up? And then, where the conversation goes is where the conversation goes. And, often you end up talking about family or learning a little bit more about history of the person, and just that vulnerability and the openness is what binds you together that little bit more. But sometimes we think that just that one contact point was enough to retain the relationship for the next year, but it's not. It just needs constant work. And you've got to, I love that you do it every month, because I heard you talking about appraisals earlier, and that's something we used to do. It was like a yearly appraisal, which was horrible, to be honest. It was horrible for me having to do it. It's horrible for the person having to come in and do it, because you've got all this pent up history of things that have happened that you haven't said, and you're ready to come in and try and deliver it in an emotionally sensitive way. The person's waiting to receive it, and it's just not a conducive or productive hour. And also it means that you've got to sit for 12 months of someone not doing their job to the best of their ability because you didn't deliver the feedback when it was required. So obviously that's something that needs to be embedded in the culture, but I certainly try and kind of get almost weekly touch points. And even if it's just 5-10 minutes, and like you said, taking it out the gym. For us, we just go on a walk down the waterfront, a walk and talk, versus sitting down in the gym in the workplace. But even hearing you say that, the importance of going out has reminded me, yes, actually that is super important. I'm going to try and make a better effort of doing that.
And, one of our values is two-way feedback, right? So I really want to hear how you think base can be better and what could be improved. And also I'm going to offer you some of that as well. So if every month you kind of go through that, it kind of gets them used to that. If we hire a manager now, we would try as much as we can during the recruitment process to make sure that genuinely is one of their values. And there's lots of ways you can kind of do that during the interview process. And yeah, I will ask them, hey, what can be improved about base? What can I do better? What can base do better? And then also it's like, what do you think can be improved? Hear them out, and then you offer some ideas on that as well. And ideally they recognize what needs to be improved before you say it. That's probably the best place to be. But if they don't, you say, what, this happened a few weeks ago and I think you could have done it differently. I think this would have been more effective. And just knowing that they're going to receive that well, again, I think is easier than having a whole load of like, right, I've got a laundry list of things that you've messed up in the last 6 months. So yeah, it's certainly a positive thing, and definitely happy that we've now got that, running monthly.
I feel like we've got so many similarities in the way that we run our businesses, Jack, and even in the values. I haven't asked you what your values are, but and every time you talk about it, I'm like, that's basically our value. We just worded it differently, which is really cool.
Yeah, I think for something with values as well, it's easy to say what your values are, but it doesn't really mean anything. We do talk about the values and why they're important to us during the induction process when they first come on. But really, you shouldn't have to say. You need to show them what the values are. We could say two-way feedback is one of our values, but if they tell me what's wrong, I'm not doing something well, and I'm like, that's bullshit, that's not true. Well, then it's not our value, right? We've said it is, but it's just not. So really, I think the best values you can see and feel, not just read about.
Okay, we're getting close to wrapping this up. I have to say, I'm very curious to hear what the baseline tests are. So every month you take your clients through the baseline, I think it's called, right?
Well, not anymore. So yeah, maybe I didn't explain that very well. So that was the system. That was like the second phase, I guess. So yeah, didn't explain that very well, I guess. Baseline now is integrated into every class that we have. So any
Okay, so
class
just
that
a
you go
constant
to,
monitoring of.
correct. That was an important part of the evolution. So it went from
Gotcha.
being that monthly assessment. I can't come. It was quite basic stuff. It was like pull-ups, push-ups. I think we had deadlifts, something like that, a 4-minute run test. It was these kind of things. But now it's embedded into every class. So
Gotcha.
as you go through the class, there's tablets throughout the class, and at the end of each set, you would enter in the weights that you've lifted on a certain strength set, the distance that you've rowed on a certain Concept 2 rower set, and then that's aggregated within our app, and you can view that data. Every 15 days, we cycle these sets. And that's how we can say, okay, well, last time you did this set, you did 683 meters on this particular interval row set. Let's try and beat that today. And you can coach them through that. And then every 3 months, we mix the programming up again. We're just in the process of adding in a rig station, so we can now do barbell work with this as well. Currently, we just have run, row, bike, and dumbbell strength, but we're going to add in a barbell strength, which I think is an important, evolution of our concept as well. So yeah, sorry, it's not a monthly thing now. It's embedded into all of our classes.
Awesome. I was excited to hear what your baseline
you have to
tests
try it out. Yeah, you have to try it out when you come here. You have to try it out.
I will 100%.
We'll get you on the app.
Jack, let me finish by asking you what is the future of base? You've talked about expanding overseas. You've talked about this concept of 10 gyms. What do you envision the future of base?
Yeah, good question. It's been savage the last few years, and I think it's important to say that, financially, we've gone from being very strong, very profitable, lots of money in the bank, to having to take out loans to keep the business going and to pay our staff something over lockdowns. And yeah, it's just been savage financially. So we are definitely in a rebuilding phase. We have been profitable, thankfully, just about since we opened up back in, I think, October it was last year, after the last lockdown. But big light at the end of the tunnel. We're back to being profitable now. Personal training has been very strong since we came back. Group classes has been a bit more of a gradual build, but we're seeing tons of positive signs. As I said, we've retained most of our coaches, and we've brought on some great new coaches as well. So now we're going to start to look forward to the future and kind of pick up where we left off in 2020. I will be going to Singapore next month, depending on when this is put out, in mid-June, to go to the Fit Summit, of course, but also to really have a look at the fitness industry there, see how the dust has settled. There's tons going on there, but for me, that is where the base concept belongs. I believe, sorry, Ed, I do believe Singapore is the primary fitness market in Asia. All the big brands come from elsewhere into Asia through Singapore. And we do have aspirations to put baseline technology and the base concept in more hands around the world. And I think for me, that starts in Singapore. That's the next stage. And we hopefully go out from there. So we're looking at a few models for growth. We would like to corporately own our first location in Singapore. That is part of the plan at the moment, but moving forwards, we would probably look at a franchise model. And I think the systems that we have, the technology that we have, would quite nicely support that. But still kind of figuring that out. And I think after my trip to Singapore next month, I should have a better idea of that. Got some other cool projects, which I'd love to talk about, but maybe we'll jump on a podcast in a year or so and talk about that. There's one particular one which I think will change the fitness industry. Maybe I'll just leave this little teaser out there, which I think could really change the fitness industry. It's a bit of a side project, but it does feed into base as well. And if we do go ahead with that, I'll certainly want to really get that message out, because I think it could be really, really positive for gyms, gym owners, and ultimately customers around the world.
And there's no way you can say I'm working on something that's going to change the fitness industry forever and just leave it on that. So you're going to have to give us a little bit more, Jack. You're going to have to. Otherwise, we're sitting on here looking at each other eye to eye all night.
It's something that will help gym owners to really, around the world, really do what they need to be doing in terms of delivering a A1 fitness experience. I think that's probably enough. I think that's enough.
That's got me excited. At least I know it might be catering to me. So that's cool.
Oh, for sure. I think it would certainly help you out. Definitely. Given everything that you're doing with Coastal, I think it would be big for you.
Awesome. Jack, well, this has been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Where can people find out more about you?
You can find Base, just search for Base Bangkok anywhere. Fitness Business Asia, again, just search for Fitness Business Asia on Spotify, Apple, Google, and it will pop up. Jack Thomas, I think it's LinkedIn/Fitness Business Asia, and I will come up. That's probably the best place to connect with me, and definitely happy to connect with any of the listeners. Just drop me a ad on LinkedIn, drop me a message. Always good to connect. And if this does go out before the Fit Summit, 15th of June, I'll be there. Great to meet up with anyone there as well. If not, then just drop a message through.
Awesome. Jack, thank you so much for your time. Have a wonderful day.
Really appreciate it. Speak to you soon.